Welcome, everybody, to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Ryan Wedig, who is the president and CEO of Vasion, which is formerly Printer Logic. He's responsible for building and growing the team on his way from 0 to 70 million over 11 years. Ryan, welcome. Happy to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Ryan.
I can't go wrong having another Ryan on the show.
Great name.
Used to partner with you a long time ago, so it's pretty cool seeing you come full circle and see how far the company's come from when you started at Printer Logic. So would love to get into your background. But before we do, let's do a real quick revenue rundown so everyone has an understanding of where you're at in terms of the stage of the journey. So where are you guys at in terms of your ARR right now?
Right now, we're looking through the end of the year. We'll probably hit right around 70 million in ARR.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on that. That's a big milestone to hit. And then how big is your team?
Just over 300 folks around the globe.
Okay.
So you got offices in London and Frankfurt, a really strong team in the Philippines, strong team in Mexico, and a really good contingency in Canada. The rest of that's kind of half of it's probably here in St. George, which is our headquarters, and then another chunk kind of US-based folks around the rest of the US.
Excellent, man. So what's your primary go-to-market for revenue growth, and like how are you growing the company?
Well, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, like when we first got going, we were very much in the print space. So go-to-market, the first attempt was really to try to get the folks in the managed print service provider groups to understand our value proposition, get excited about it. And I came from Cisco, right? So as we developed a go-to-market strategy, it was just obvious. You would never want to develop a direct sales team. You just get the channel partners to fall in love with you, and away you go. But didn't really work out that way. It turned out that I'd say that the technology that we were pushing was novel enough and innovative enough that it was kind of a tough sell for an industry that was really established and staunched with like the products that they were selling. And so pretty quickly we realized we needed a strong direct capability. So we built out a direct sales team that was like a hybrid direct sales and a hybrid channel. The other thing that we noticed was our value proposition was much more fun. Like we didn't go to like the print management shows. Like we wouldn't go to like Xerox or Canon or these kinds of shows and try to sell amongst people buying printers. Our mission was to eliminate print servers. That's what we were really focused on, which is much more of an IT infrastructure play, which played into my background. And so we would go to Citrix Synergy, we'd go to VMworld, we would go to Microsoft Ignite. We were really trying to get to the system admins and explain to them how actually getting rid of your print servers was possible, which was very much an infrastructure play. I mean, we would go to Cisco Live, right? Because how do we get that print traffic to stay local, eliminate the print server, and not bugger up your network, right? So we were from the get-go creating a sales force that we could just make a four-legged sales call and get in with customers and explain to them how we can get a really quick ROI by removing infrastructure. And of course, this is back in 2012. So it was in the context of private cloud. People weren't really trusting the public cloud at the time. And we had kind of a web stack that was a really great replace, 400 print servers with a single web stack instance in your private cloud. So that was the technology we really got going with. And those were the go-to-market strategies. But because we were limiting infrastructure, we actually really quickly opened up our channel to not just the print management folks, but also to just the traditional IT VARs. And, they were out there trying to figure out how to create private clouds. And that seemed to be a good opportunity to say, while you're at it, how do we get rid of your print servers? And that's really how we carved out a niche for ourselves, was just going to those early adopters, those innovators that wanted to go heavy into private cloud. And if you fast forward to today, a lot of that has changed in that public cloud's been adopted. And
Mhm.
so what that did is it opened up an opportunity. Back in 2016, we were really the first to go and create a true SaaS version of print management. Allowed people to do direct IP without the job coming back to us, but like keeping it on your network and being able to keep those print jobs local and do that with SaaS. And so by 2019, that had become a very strong product for us. And we built out the first MSP portal. And so that became a very interesting kind of go to market strategy for us because up to that point, we were all enterprise. Like the more print servers you had, the more printers you had, the better our value proposition worked out. And because we were involved with a four-legged sales call, economics just didn't make sense. We couldn't, when you looked at the cost to acquire a customer on a four-legged sales call, we couldn't go in and try to land a four printer customer. Our technology would be great for those folks, but they didn't have enough print servers, enough locations to really justify the ROI. And on our end to justify the CAC. By the time you've looked at the total lifetime value, it'd be forever to recover. So when we went to the true SaaS model and opened up that MSP portal, all of a sudden the go-to-market just mushroomed into the whole SMB because it was really cool to be able to go to those MSPs and say, look, you buy a stack of 50, you become the support interface between us and the product. And these small businesses are just like branches to you, and you can go out and you can sell to them, service them, everything that they love about you, and make some upside on the solution, and they fall even more in love with you because you made printing easier. And for us, you don't look like 10 printer shops. You look like 100 printer enterprise, which is right in line with the kinds of folks we want to deal with. So the MSP portal has been really great part of our go-to-market strategy. And it's actually just exploding.
That's interesting, man. So what's the percentage of like revenue or customers on the MSP side, like the SMB side versus like the classic enterprise side? Because I didn't even know you guys were
So
playing in that space.
so 2019 is when we launched that portal. 20 is when I'd say it really had matured to the point where we had all the things that the majority of MSPs needed to kind of get going with. So over the last 3 years, it's gone from 0 to probably 15% of our revenue. But what's interesting is the growth rate and the number of customers. So if you look at it from revenue perspective, but if you look at it from customer perspective, it's up over 50% of our customers now.
Oh wow, okay, I see what you're saying.
So like, because we call them indirect, right? Because they're going through the MSP portal and the MSP channel, but like it's really very, very powerful. And like I said, that's the thing that's just mushrooming. And that's that dream that we had at the beginning, right? But it turns out it wasn't the print people who were interested in our value proposition, interested in learning something about new and novel, interested in figuring out how to really truly add value back to the customer. They just wanted to kind of like sign a lease on a printer, sign the paper that got the thing out of the way, and they made their money, and boom, and then the sales guys were out of it. That's changing now. And what we're actually starting to see is public cloud adoption is really coming to full force. Instead of us going out and trying to push our product through that traditional print channel, we're seeing a huge pull from the customers, dragging those guys into our product, whether they like it or not. And there are some really great partners in that space that are innovative, that are building out IT practices, that are saying, I have a good relationship on this print lease thing that I've had, and I've been good to them, and I understand technology. They trust us as a technology partner. And now we're going to move into the IT side. I could start naming some really cool names that I just am super proud of the work that's going on over there. And we're like a shoe-in for them because they're like, hey, you've been telling us this for 5 years or 10 years in some cases. And now it's really cool to be able to just have an IT strategy that can keep up with the innovation that's going on that elimination of
Okay.
infrastructure conversation.
Sounds good, man. That makes a lot of sense. That's fantastic growth, especially 3 years, 50% of your customers. I get why the dollar value would be different. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, like you went from 0 and are on track to 70 million in 11 years. I guess like, and it just judging by what you walk through, it sounds like there's been some twists and turns along the way, right? So like there's every single story. So like, how did you do that? And like, what would you say is like your key formula for making that happen? I know that's a loaded question,
Yeah,
right?
no, it's not. I mean, like the key formula, I had a really interesting conversation with one of my team members, one of the guys that reports directly to me. And he brought up this, diagram, right? And I'm trying to consume this slide. It has, it basically says, if you measure success, there's what you're shooting for, right? As success. And then there's what you achieve. And if you measure the difference between what you've achieved and what you shot for, you're always going to be depressed and sad. And then on the flip side of that, if you shot for the stars and you only got to the moon, but you measure what you actually accomplished, then you could feel like you achieved success and you're happy and you're excited and you're elated. And so I look at this thing, it takes me a minute and I consume it and I'm like, so basically the guy's just like, whoever wrote this is just trying to say like, do you see the glass half empty or half full? Like, you don't need a diagram to say that. Like, it's just pretty simple. And I was like, I've just never operated that way. Like, I don't even care. Like, I don't like the word success is kind of a silly concept because the only way it's a subjective measurement. Like the only way you can say that you achieved success or didn't achieve success is based on some arbitrary measurement, right? Like, is success to one person that I have like the house on the hill with the fancy car and then the model on my arm? Maybe that's somebody's idea of success. Maybe somebody else's, I've got like 5 happy, healthy kids. And that's success. Like what is the word success? So the key to answer your question for me is like to absolutely be totally uninterested in success and be 100% focused on performance. Because performance isn't subjective. Like you can sit down any given day and you can take an objective measurement of performance. Like it is what it is. And from that place, you can make a forecast on what can I do in performance to create additional upgrades to get to the next place. Like that's the key to this whole thing. Like, you know, we've gotten to a place where, you know, instead of me and my partner in shared office space down by the river, literally down by the river, you know, next to the post office, we've gone from that to a small set of buildings that we leased to a really beautiful, awesome building. And a lot of times people will come through, they'll walk through this new building. They kind of ask the same type of question of like, did you ever imagine, or did you like, you know, like, can you believe that you're, and it's like, for me, the key to answering your question is I didn't even think about it. Like the building wasn't like something to aspire to measure success. Like the building, like we needed a building that was inspiring to walk into, because the imagination and the creativity of the people that walk into our building, that is our product. And we need to create, as a company, we got to create something that maximizes their ability to let that out. And we've got X amount of people now and X amount of people in the future. And that's what performance is going to look like in the future. So when we built the building, it wasn't like some shrine to success. It was like, okay, here's where we're at on performance today. Here's where we want to be in performance in the future. And this is what the thing should look like to achieve that upgrade. And then we built that. Like, but like, it's kind of an interesting, like, it's an interesting concept when people like, could you ever imagine having arrived here? Like arrived where? And that to me is the key, is like, don't be focused on arriving somewhere. Just be committed to performance, like understanding where you're at in performance and understanding what the next upgrade looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great perspective to look at it from. And So like so as a CEO, like what are the top 3 to 5 things from a that you use to personally measure performance of the organization? I know it's hard to probably break it down to 3 to 5, but if you had to, like, to create and emulate that success, if you had to start all over again, what would that be?
So number one, and this would have been not even on my list. So I'm talking to a Ryan that was sitting next to Jarrett, and that was the company with a contractor in Canada doing our development. Like that was the company, right? So I'm talking to that kid, and what I would say is culture is nowhere on your list. It should be the most important thing on your list. At least, maybe not. No, let me rephrase. That should be the second most important thing on your list right now. Culture. And it's just so hard when you're in that position because culture, when you're there, is like naturally writing itself through the nature of the way that you hire. One of our values is we use a book called Radical Candor. We actually had Kim Scott come in and one of our kickoffs, and she's just an incredible lady. I love that book. It can be misinterpreted really easily because a lot of times when people hear this concept of radical candor, they want to say, oh, cool. Like you build a culture where you can just kind of say whatever you want to say. You can be direct, right? And it's true. That is the end goal, is to get to a place of like radical honesty. But there's in her diagram up the vertical, the vertical part of that box, right? That the quadrant model that she delivers on is care personally. So culture was unintentionally very, very actively being created when it went from me and my partner to starting to hire people. Through the hiring process, you're creating culture. And that's what I would say is like, why would we work on culture when culture is who we hire and they get it or they don't and all this. But I wish that by the time we got, like, if I had to go back and say what was an important measure of performance is like the health of your culture. And you can measure the health of your culture. Like we actively measure our ENPS score right now, our employee net promoter score. Like we measure that and we look at our engagement studies and like religiously. So that's a measure of performance. And if I had to go back and start over again, the second we got past 20 people, like those 20 key people that we hired that knew that I cared personally, like I'm an intense guy, right? Like no doubt about it. There's some nuclear furnace that drives most entrepreneurs, and their intensity is what kind of helps you go from, $500,000 in the hole after 6 months to escape velocity, and all of that paid off 6 months later. Like there's a certain level of intensity that's got to show up to create that kind of stuff. But when you start to go past those first 20 people who are like all in on that, and then people you hired are starting to hire people, the care personally component is not a given anymore. Mm-hmm. And it can absolutely blow up in your face. I mean, like things that made sense and the culture that you thought you had is being actively created by that next set of hires. And it's not that they're bad hires or bad people. It's just that to scale, the skill set that you're bringing in is requiring a broader set of personalities. And as you do that, man, you've got to be actively measuring the performance of your culture and how that's relating back to people. So I would say that's probably
so two. You said that was number two. What's number one?
Yeah, I would say that's probably number two, because now I'm going back to like there's this other thing that occurred. I remember, so I worked with Jarrett before we named it Printer Logic, and we launched the Printer Logic brand. He had a company called Printer Properties Pro, and it kind of, the technology has kind of merged from Printer Properties Pro eventually into Printer Logic. I met Jarrett a year into Printer Properties Pro to do business management stuff. It was a product that serviced Novell, so it was kind of like on the down curve, but there was plenty for a lifestyle business. He did really well. It was awesome. But that's when I first got to know him. And as a business development manager, I he came to me one day and he said, Ryan, like there's this tech rag. I can't even remember the name of it. He's like, we should have full page ads in here because people need to know about our product, and this would be great. And I said, okay, yeah, like absolutely. Let me go figure it out. So I get a hold of the rag. I I think I chopped up 6 pages to make 6 full pages into some quarters and some halves and one full or something, so we could be in there for a year and just really get our name out there. And like I remember after 12 months, us looking at each other, and that's when I learned the old marketing adage, like Jarrett, we're pretty sure that 50% of our marketing spend is working. We just don't know which 50%, you know? Mm-hmm. And up to that point, all the other marketing he had done, it was far enough in to this was 2002, 2003. We were far enough in where all the other marketing he had done was tagged. It was like, you know, like you knew exactly where they, from what banner ad they had clicked on or whatever, what email was sent, you knew, but we didn't know that about this. And so when we came back and, you know, we wrote the business plan for Printer Logic, we got going on it, that was just seared into my memory. And because culture is great, but if you can't get to escape velocity, it's not going to matter.
Right.
Right. So culture's kind of just, you can get away with the rough, raw hiring the network, the care personally is built in on the culture first. And that is critical, that you're not actively thinking about culture, that you've just hired the right people at first, because knowing what spend, and like really, really early on, like from the start, when we sat down in 2012 and said, how's this going to be? Like we bought a 5-seat Salesforce license for the 2 of us, you know, which was a big spend. But we knew we could map out our processes, understand, and start doing analytics. I mean, if you use Salesforce like most people do, it's a big waste of money. But if you use Salesforce the way you can use it, there's massive power in understanding, you know, where in the sales cycle is it breaking down? What are our conversion rates across each of these stages that we've identified in our sales process? And if you actively study those, by the time we were at 2013, so like just a year and a half into business, we had a Domo instance. This was before Domo really had matured, but we knew that business intel, because the amount of time we were taking to manage all the spreadsheets that we were updating every day, to get those analytics, to know those conversion percentages, all that stuff, like knowing those conversions, knowing every dollar that goes out, what is the actual value back to the business, being able to spend money on test holes, knowing that you're going to get actionable data back. Like this is the critical part. That's why I put it first in front of culture.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's actually superseding culture. It's just that when you first get going, culture is, you just have to hire right, and culture has to be a given. So as soon as you get to that point where your BI is speaking to you and you understand, you know, where money is going that's good and where money is going is bad, as soon as you understand, the next thing to move to is culture. And I didn't do that until way later than I should. I didn't even know it was a thing. And so I would say those would be kind of the 2 critical measures of performance that have to be in place to take off, to really achieve escape velocity.
Okay, that makes sense. So data versus outcomes, and then the health of the culture, or I should say culture, obviously with an underlying factor of like employee NPS and making sure that you hire properly so that it could scale the way that you want to, while also constantly having your pulse on it, right? So yeah. I think that's really strong. What about like right now, right? Like, so you've matured as a company, you're approaching 70 million. What's your single biggest challenge to growing the business right now? In terms
I think right now, so in the end of 2018, really going into 2019, not only did we decide that we were going to go into a pure SaaS play on our primary product, which has been wildly successful. I mean, absolutely took the market by storm, is number 1 by far in serverless on serverless print management. And it's a really great base from which to do new and innovative things, right? So what challenges we have ahead is in 2000 and end of 18 going into 19, when we made an acquisition of a company called Maxfault, we were looking at what are the market adjacencies that we could do to expand. We know how to build software. We've got a great sales team. Our channel partners have developed and grown. We see this MSP portal as something that really can be a differentiator. Like, we had all these things, but we had one product, one. Mm-hmm. And so that acquisition was, we're about 4.5 years into a 5-year plan from making that acquisition take us from a single product to a multi-product company. And when I say that, it's a multi-product platform, a multi-featured platform, which definitely incorporates 6, 7 very distinct point products in the market today. But we see an opportunity to actually make a single platform where all those things come together to help automate business process, whether they're analog processes still occurring in paper or processes that have to get digitized. That's kind of the current work that we're in, is getting all of that launched. And, Maxfault brought over a bunch of really great customers, awesome case studies. They're very excited about the upgrades that we've brought to them, some of the very strategic new customers that we've brought on into that product. But going into next year, where we get really excited, is getting to that 5 years on a 5-year plan and launching the platform complete, one login, all the access to all those products, and never having to leave. Like, how many times have you been in a workflow solution and you've got to leave the workflow to go get a digital signature, and then you got emails involved, and then you got to download it, and then you got to bring that PDF or whatever that document is back into the workflow. Like, simple example, just how do you integrate it so that you have a native digital signature with your workflow tool? And that's one of 6 of those point products that we are looking to merge together. So on the one hand, it's like we have these multiple point products that we're bringing together and becoming a multi-product company. But at the same time, we're really trying to go to market and say these shouldn't be multiple products. They should be features inside of a single platform. So right now, how do you scale a sales team? And that's one of the balances that we've you talk about challenges. You're going to have a 5-year plan to introduce all of this new vision, this new product. How do you go to your existing team and say, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, this is the future of this company? Halfway into the 5 years, or 2.5 years, you actually change the name of the company. And then you're saying, but we need you to just focus on the innovation and the strategy around the cash cow. There's this other group that's working on the Vasion future. You'll be brought in when the time is right. We really need you to stay focused on making the best serverless print management platform out there, because if that's what's funding the next phase of this company. That has been an incredible challenge. And I think there are, for us to go from an on-prem perpetual license model to a purely SaaS ARR-based model. I mean, the road of folks that didn't make it to that, the road is just littered with tombstones of companies that don't make that transition. Either the technology was more complex than they anticipated and they ran out of money because of that, or when you go from 3.5 years worth of revenue up front down to 1 year of revenue at a time, you run out of money because you just ran out of money, even though the technology was fine. Like, there's so many examples of companies who don't make that transition. So super proud of our ability to make that transition. And now, like, the new challenge, going from a single product to multiple products, that's really where I see. And then the scaling, like, there's just incredible scaling that you get to as you start to approach 100 million and think about what does the company look like going into 100 million in ARR. There are very different levels of thought process, delegation, strategy that I have to get into, that I was able to not worry about before that I has to be worried about, and work that I could go in and do that I have to trust the team now. So I would say between those are kind of the two big challenges we really have our eyes on and do a lot of time and planning around of how do we make it, it was interesting last year. We're a company that we work really heavy with OKRs. It's kind of an Andy Grove thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're managing through objectives and key results. Last year, we really focused on scaling the business so that we would be in a healthy place when we get to 100 million. 100 million was kind of like inevitable. Like when we looked at the forecast, the way things were growing, it wasn't like, how do we get to 100 million? It was, okay, we're going to get to 100 million. What do we look like there? Like, are the wheels falling off the wagon, the company falling apart? Are we having to like do whole cloth switch outs of executive teams and leadership and all the things that you see when people arrive to that kind of scale? Or do we take the time right now to look at our people's, our processes, and our systems to actually scale up to 100 million now, so that when we get there, we're on firm footing to say, what is the next level of scale? What does it look like when we get to 250 million in AR, a billion in AR? Like that's the stuff that we really are active in right now. It's just that scaling process.
Excellent, man. Well, unfortunately, we're up on time, so this was a great perspective just kind of on the journey and how you're going, how you've gotten there, and then where you're going to exactly as well. So where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Vasion? And then we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah, Vasion.com. You can learn more about the company, what's going on there. In terms of me personally, I like, kind of goes back to the first comment. Like, I'm pretty involved in performance. So heads down, working away. I know it's funny because we get a lot of comments of like, you're this little secret down in St. George. Like, when people hear about our numbers and what we're doing, it's kind of like, what? Really? and there's all kinds of strategies. Ours is kind of head down, focus on performance. So I don't actually do a lot of these podcasts. I really appreciate you making some time and space. It's fun to kind of be able to think about some of these things and say them out loud. And thanks for making the forum available
Yeah, man.
hopefully share some thoughts.
It was fun, dude. It was, I mean, it's cool. Like, I started off the episode, like, back in the day when it was in the corporate environment. Printer Logic was one of the companies that we partnered with. So it's crazy to see how far you've come over the last, probably 7-8 years in terms of like how much the company's grown, how much the solution. So I saw the two or three versions ago from where you are now. So it's pretty wild, and it's awesome to see that progress, man. So thanks for being on. Appreciate it, man. And thank you all for joining us as well. We'll see you on the next episode.